Good morning, and welcome to the Summertime and Idle Mind, Keeping Children Drug-Free While Home this Summer webinar. We are excited to have Tiffany Little here with us today. Tiffany Little is a Senior Substance Abuse Prevention Specialist for Fairfax County Public Schools. She has been with the SAPS program since 2018. Prior to working with FCPS, she was a substance abuse therapist working with the Adult Detention Center with incarcerated men, the mental health therapist for the 3 state probation offices for the Department of Corrections, substance abuse therapist for the Marine Corps, and has worked with children in the therapeutic day treatment programs. Her primary role with FCPS is to support the team of 22 SAPs and provide program oversight for the district. We are very happy to have you here today, and now I'll pass it to you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and good morning. We are going to dive right in. So our agenda for today is we're going to run through just some basic understanding of social norms, i.e. statistics, when it comes to drug use and adolescent behavior, emotion regulation. We're going to talk about Narcan for a second, go into drug initiation and when kids often will first use a substance, social emotional learning, and then we'll do a practice session. Also, if you see me looking to the right, it's because I'm looking at my separate monitor that has my slides up there. You all are straight ahead. So this question is, what are the top 3 substances used by youth in Fairfax County? Oftentimes when people think about the drugs that students use, they go to what they see most often in the news. And what I would like for you to consider is that the stories that make the news are newsworthy because they don't happen very often. Okay, so I'll say that again. The stories that make the news are newsworthy because they are outside of the norm. So when you see news stories and articles that talk about an overdose or something else that's large or that feels large in our head, it's because it's not the norm. So when you think about the top 3 substances that youth use in Fairfax County, it's not opioids, it's not fentanyl, it's not cocaine or any of those other quote unquote hard or big drugs. And I tend to not even use that terminology. But the top 3 drugs that our youth use are alcohol, nicotine, and cannabis. And I share that because there's a lot of talk about opioids and fentanyl, which is great because it's life-saving. But I don't want you to think that just because we're talking about it a lot means that it's happening a lot. However, we're talking about it a lot because it is dangerous. And for some people, when they use it the first time, they might experience an overdose. So that's why we're talking about it and you see things about it on the news. So social norms is the idea that we need to be mindful of the way that we share stats and facts. So when youth are exposed to messages that explain the positive, true norms that most youth make healthy choices and engage in pro-social activities, they are more likely to take part in those positive behaviors. So again, thinking about that news analogy. So we need to be talking about the behaviors that most youth engage in, not the small minority of youth who actually use substances, but we need to talk about what the majority is actually doing. And the majority tends to engage in extracurricular activities. The majority tends to hang out with their friends and drink soda or caffeinated beverages, not alcohol. So youth and adults overwhelmingly overestimate the number of 12 to 18-year-olds who use substances. So example of the way that we speak will speak in absolutes. So we'll say things like everyone drinks. You can't go into the bathroom without there being a large cloud of vape smoke. Everybody vapes at this school. most caregivers let their kids drink. So we need to be mindful of using the terms of most, always, never, and things like that because it becomes hyperbole. So these are some of the actual statistics. So Fairfax County Public Schools administers the Fairfax County Youth Survey every year to 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. The sixth graders get a different survey. So when you look at some of our statistics, you can see from 2018 to 2023 what has been happening in FCPS in comparison to the US when it comes to these grades using nicotine. Okay. So in 2018, 16.7% of FCPS students vaped nicotine in the past month. So slightly higher than the US average. And then we'll jump all the way down to 2023. 3.4% of FCPS youth vaped nicotine in the past month in comparison to the US being 11.8%. So you'll see that we've been trending down over time with 16.7%, 11.9, 6.6, 4.2, and then 3.4. This is a video about Narcan. Oh, let me stop sharing right quick because I need to share my audio. Is lagging, but you all can still hear me, correct?
Yes.
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
great. Okay, good. So I wanted to show that Narcan video because, of course, first I want you to understand how to use Narcan, but to also consider the fact that although most of our kids aren't using opioids, remember Narcan is used to reverse an opioid overdose, so fentanyl, heroin, any type of medication that's prescribed for pain. But we also want to remember that Narcan can be purchased over the counter without a prescription. So, although the numbers are trending down as far as youth using opioids as well, it's better to be safe and to have that insurance of having Narcan in your home. So now we'll look at the youth survey when it comes to lifetime prevalence of students reporting use of drugs throughout their lifetime. So we'll see overall for alcohol use, lifetime use in 2023 was 16.5%. So again, thinking about the top substances that our youth use. So alcohol is one. Inhalants is low and it's been low for a while. Typically, I've found that inhalant use is generally reserved or primarily used by youth and people who have a low socioeconomic status or people who live in rural communities. Cigarettes, of course, have trended down thanks to vapes. And then vapes, 2.8%, cannabis, 1.4%, and then other drugs, 1.2%. So that would be cocaine, psychedelics like hallucinogens, and potentially abusing any over-the-counter substance as well. And then this is for the youth reporting their use in the past month. So the prior slide was their lifetime use. This is the past month. So overall for alcohol, we have 1.6%, inhalants 1.3, cigarettes 0.2, vape 0.8, cannabis 0.1, other drugs 0.1 as well. Now, this is what I want you to consider, especially with summertime right around the corner. So in June, July, and December, we typically see peaks in substance use initiation. So that means the first time that a child decides to use a substance typically happens during the months of June, July, and December. So those are the time periods when they have a break from school, which would mean that they have a break from their typical routine, which really just proves that kids thrive off of having a routine and boundaries. So, why youth use substances? It could be a number of things. It could be the perception of little risk, meaning that if they use this substance, they believe that it's not going to cause that much harm to them. So they are willing to take the risk. And what I want you to consider is that young people are set up to take risk. It is completely okay for them to take risks because a risk simply means that you're trying something new. However, the problem becomes apparent when they are taking risk that they shouldn't be taking. So, of course, some risks have higher rewards than others. So, of course, using substances is taking a risk that we don't want them to take. But trying out for a new sport is a risk that we want them to take, or taking an AP class or a new foreign language. Relieving boredom might be a reason why youth decide to use substances, or the simple fact that it actually feels good to use a drug. And we know this because of brain imaging and brain scans. And we know this because otherwise, why would adults use alcohol? Alcohol is a drug, and they use it because it makes them feel good. Also, it might help them forget their troubles and relax, especially when you think about some of the pressures that some students are under, whether that be systemically because of our current political climate, or whether that be because of school or family pressures when it comes to grades or expectations, and also to satisfy curiosity, ease some of the maybe physical or emotional pain that they're experiencing. The interesting thing about opioids in particular is that although they are prescribed for physical pain and emotional pain often feels the same in our brain. It's very difficult for our brain to differentiate the difference between emotional pain and physical pain. So when a young person has been going through adversity or has survived some type of traumatic experience, they might find that that opioid helps them cope with the pain that they're experiencing in their head. And a lot of times, emotional pain might manifest as physical pain as well. For some kids, it makes them feel more grown up. We see this even with our survey results. So, research says that when younger kids, usually around middle school, are asked about their behaviors, particularly about things that might make them feel more grown up, they are more prone to lie and exacerbate what they do. But that's because it makes them feel more grown up, and they think that, well, if the big kids are doing it, then I want to say that I'm doing it as well because it makes them feel cool. So again, that's why it's important for us as adults to be mindful of the language that we use and make sure that we are telling the truth when we talk about the majority behavior of what kids are doing. So we don't want to say, again, all kids are using, and then have our kids hear that and then think that, well, if all kids are doing it, I might as well do it as well. Also, sometimes youth use because it helps them feel a bit more independent and it makes them feel connected to a specific group. I think that it is important for you to be mindful of your own relationship with substances in your life. So, research shows that in 2023, 84.9% of people aged 18 and older reported that they drank alcohol at some point in their lifetime. So the majority of people in the US who are 18 and older drink alcohol at some point in time in their life. And I want you to be cognizant of even some of the thoughts that pop up in your head or the words that come out of your mouth when you hear that someone says, "Oh, no, I don't drink." Sometimes the follow-up response from some people is, "Oh, why?" Like, "Oh, how could you not drink?" Like, "Oh, wow." Like, it's this big to do around someone deciding that they don't want to use alcohol. So if we are surprised by the fact that someone doesn't drink, you have to be mindful of your relationship with alcohol and what your child might process. And then next, in 2023, 23.5% of people aged 18 and older reported that they engaged in binge drinking in the past month. So that is almost a quarter of people 18 and older binge drink. So binge drinking is typically about 3 to 4 or more drinks within about a 2 hour period. So, when we're thinking about who is responsible for keeping kids safe and keeping kids drug free, we are all responsible. So, it's not solely on the parents and caregivers, it's not solely on the school system to provide the education, but it is on all of us as a community. So, we all have a hand in protecting our youth and guiding them to make sure that they are making the best choices for themselves to become a adult who makes safe and healthy decisions. So we need to balance some of the risk factors and protective factors that kids experience. It looks like maybe I'm lagging too for some reason. But this video is talking about something called three to succeed. And it's the idea that if kids are connected to an adult, a mentor, an after school activity, having adults who recognize and praise them for their good work, and children who feel like they experience like good emotions from doing good things or good deeds, then they are more likely to be a productive citizen. So the research shows that if they have at least three of those factors of connection to people and or maybe in higher power, then they are less likely to have sex early on in life, become involved with gangs, to use substances, and all of that. So the idea is that we want to balance some of the negativity that life naturally throws at us, which are those risk factors what are some of the protective factors? So we need to come in as a community and make sure that we are connecting with people and being human with one another and not relying on maybe social media or text messages. So, social emotional learning is one of the ways that FCPS looks to provide kids with education so that they can learn to balance their emotions and talk about their emotions. So, social emotional learning is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals. Feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. So, when you think about like, how do I keep my kid off of drugs? It doesn't have to be and shouldn't be you having a one-time conversation with your child about all of your fears of if they decide to use drugs or all of your anxieties and you fussing at them, right? Your conversation about drugs happens by way of your normal everyday interactions with your child. It's how you manage your own emotions because you are teaching your child through modeling how they can manage their own emotions. So when you sit down and you have these conversations, maybe in the moment with your children about their emotions and their connection to other people and their relationships, you're teaching them how to live life on life's terms so that they don't have to use a mood altering substance, i.e., a drug, to alter the way that they feel because substances alter your mood. If I'm able to manage my mood on my own, I no longer have to reach outside of myself to make me feel better because my parents, my teachers, my community have taught me how to live life on life's terms and manage my emotions because I realize that I am going to have a bad moment, but I don't need to turn it into a bad day, a bad week, month, or a year by using substances and potentially becoming addicted to them. So now, in our next few slides, we are going to practice what your conversations might look like around trying to keep your child drug-free. So I want you to keep in mind everything that I've taught you so far in the past 25 minutes. Think about that, reflect on it, and then follow up with your response. So we're going to practice because a child's life is like a piece of paper on which every person leaves a mark. So this is a Chinese proverb. So let's roll into our practice session. So you can come off of mute during this time, or you can simply type your response in the chat. So you have, this is the scenario. So you have a preschool age child and you would like to set a foundation during their preschool years for healthy habits. So the scenario is you are giving your child their daily vitamin. So as you give your child their daily vitamin, maybe this is the first time or the first few times, what type of conversations are you having with your preschool age child about you giving them their daily vitamin? Okay, so we have someone that said that vitamins are important to grow strong and healthy. Tell the child that the vitamin will make them grow and become strong. Very good. What about who is allowed to give them pills and medication? What would you say then? Right. Only mom, parents, caregiver are allowed to give you pills. Also, at times, doctors will prescribe you medication. So your doctor might give you medication, or the doctor might give the medication to your parents or caregivers. Very good. Staying away. Oh, they're rolling in now. Okay, so staying away from taking the vitamin as a have to do, but a conversation about staying healthy to play with friends and have more fun. Ooh, I like this because not only are you highlighting the fact that the vitamin, medication, etc., is to help the child stay safe, to stay healthy, but you're also highlighting the fact that they value playing, right? So you're targeting your child's values. So in order for you to stay healthy, this is what I'm giving you. And then when you continue to take this regularly, you're going to be able to go out on the playground and play with your friends or your siblings. Very good. All right, let's roll into our next one. So again, preschool age. The scenario is your child sees an adult smoking or vaping. And since you've talked about the dangers of smoking before, they are confused. So what do you say to your child? You've talked to them about smoking and vaping and how it's dangerous and unhealthy. Now they are confused because they see someone vaping, an adult at that. Remember, if it's easier for you, you can come off of mute. Okay, so someone said perhaps the adult didn't have someone to tell them that it's bad for their health. Adults who smoke or vape may get sick eventually. Some adults make unhealthy choices. Ooh, very good, very good. I like that someone said adults may get sick eventually, right? So we're highlighting the fact that some, not all, become sick due to the choices that they make. And then also the eventually piece goes to, it begins to teach children that sometimes the consequences are immediate. Sometimes the consequences are far out. So we're teaching children to not only just focus on the here and now, but think about their future. And that might be very, not might be, that will be hard for preschool age kids. Again, some adults make unhealthy choices. Very good, because it is a choice for some. So some adults do things that aren't good for their health. We are learning the ways for our family to be healthy. Ooh, I love that, right? Because it creates a norm of in this household and our family, we are going to make choices that make us feel healthy and whole. So we all make choices. Sometimes people feel that's the only choice they have to feel better. Ooh, that's beautiful. That's why we talk about healthy choices and make the best choice for our bodies to stay strong. Very good. People can choose bad choices and get sick, but you need to keep choosing. It says green ones. I think this means like healthy choices, maybe. Very good, y'all. I like the fact that you're highlighting that we all get to make our own decisions. And it is okay that people make decisions that are different from the decisions and choices that we make for ourselves. Very good. All right, so another preschool one. So the tip here is that um, again, looking at the fact that our conversations don't always have to be about drugs, right? It's in your normal everyday moments that you are teaching your child to manage their emotions. So turn frustration into a learning opportunity. If a child becomes frustrated during play, help them find possible solutions to the problem. Allow them to find solutions as much as possible so they can gain confidence in their own skills and abilities. This will help them problem solve in the future and self soothe. A lot of times, what I hear from parents when I do presentations like this in person is a lot of fear and anxiety, and that fear and anxiety ends up morphing into anger. So when they are engaging with their child, they're talking at their child instead of having a dialogue. It becomes a monologue rooted in anger and fear. So the parent will say, you are not to do this. And if I ever see you do this, then this will happen. Or there's the overt sadness and the guilt tripping of, oh my gosh, if you do this, it would just break my heart. I never want this to happen to you. It's very emotional. And I, when I witness it, it seems as if adults are attempting to manipulate children into what that adult deems as righteous behavior. Okay. So a lot of times adults will use fear, scare tactics, and their own anxiety to manipulate their child to do what they want their kid to do, i.e., stay off of drugs. So they're using their heightened emotions, hoping that their kid will change and do what they want them to do. And that's not okay because the goal is to get your child to be an adult who can make decisions for themselves. So that's why we're going to start with our preschool age kids and teach them how to manage their emotions when they are playing and they become frustrated. And I have a lot of these preschool age scenarios up here because oftentimes parents they wait until their kid is in high school and they say, oh, okay, well, when my kid is in high school, that's when I'll talk to them about drugs. But we can see from the youth survey that kids are beginning to use drugs early on in life. And those critical periods are typically before they transition to another school. So you want to talk to them when they're in fifth grade, you want to talk to them in sixth grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, 12th grade, all of those years where their stress becomes heightened because they are in a new environment or they're transitioning. But you want to set the foundation when they're younger. Just because something is difficult for you to manage doesn't mean that it's going to be difficult for your child to understand. So now let's go through a preteen scenario. Stay healthy and avoid drug-related risk is our focus here. So the scenario is your child is going to middle school and you are aware they will have more exposure to substances. So, what does your conversation sound like? They're now transitioning to middle school, and you have heard that there might be a little bit more drug activity, or you just know as an adult there might be more substance use activity in middle school than in elementary school. What type of conversation do you have with your child? All right, they're starting to roll in. Be mindful of what you've been taught. Very good. So, recognizing that you have already had conversations with them about substances, you're going to bring it to their awareness to make good choices, be yourself, i.e., you don't have to fit in with the crowd, or remember, it's not even the crowd, with a particular crowd, because the majority of kids don't use substances. And think for yourself. Very good. We want you to make good choices to stay healthy and avoid drugs and alcohol. Very good. It's important for you to keep making good choices, especially when you see other kids around you making bad ones. This is where you build on the conversation from earlier years. Very good. About how other people make their own choices. Have the confidence to share your values with them. Oh, I like that because that last piece of have the confidence to share your values with them shows that they're going to be a good friend. So, a little science is that the brain develops from the back of our head to the front. So, the back of our head is responsible for keeping us alive, for breathing, all of those automatic, autonomic things that happen that we don't have to think about. And then as we move to like that middle part of our brain, that is when the a youth or young person begins to want to fit in with the group. And it's not something problematic because fitting in with group or being part of a community helps us survive. When you think about some of the evolution theories, being part of a group protects us from harm when there is an outside predator, right? We also know this because we say things like it takes a village to raise a child, right? So when you say have the confidence to share your values with them, it's targeting what's important to a young person, which is their friendships and their group. So you're encouraging them to be a good example amongst their friends. I'm going to need a little bit more specifics on how this can apply to a child with autism or ADHD. Like, what's your question in particular? Just clarify that for me, please. So, some of the tips when it comes to a preteen is that it's important to share your rules and your values and reinforce them. So when they do something and they break a rule, you should have a consequence for it. They should know that this is my boundary. And if I step outside of my boundary, then there will be a consequence for me. So make sure that your rules are clear. And then also be mindful of the fact that feelings of insecurity may creep up during this time. So you are going to want to affirm your child. So when you're having your conversations with your child, just keep in mind that a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So when you engage, you want to be mindful of your tone, your body language, and the diction or your word choice, because your nonverbals are going to speak way more than what you say. So now teenagers. So your focus is staying healthy and avoiding drug-related risk. So your scenario is you hear about a student who overdosed in the community. What is your response? You heard about an overdose. What do you say? I'm going to answer this question as you all type your answer in the chat. So the question about a child who has autism, and I'm assuming a dual diagnosis of ADHD. So both of those diagnoses, especially ADHD, puts a child more at risk of abusing substances. Let me share 2 points. So the first is that when a child has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, um, when they are medicated, they are less likely to use substances. If they are medicated and the doctor says, hey, your child needs medication for this, and you decide to put them on medication, it reduces the likelihood that they will engage in risky behavior. I share that because sometimes parents, although medication has been recommended, will not put their child on medication because they believe that the medication is going to cause harm or that their child is going to become addicted to the meds. But typically, the way that ADHD medication works is that they are prescribed, which should be the right dose for them, and it helps them make healthier choices for them. And then when it comes to autism, yes, it puts them at a slightly higher risk. I'm first of all, autism spectrum disorder. Of course, because it's a spectrum, there's going to be a variety of symptoms and or presentations. So I'm assuming that this child might be a little bit more higher functioning. So if they are at school, maybe in general education classes, then you're going to want to be mindful of their friend group. So you're going to have to keep a closer eye on their friend group since there is copying behavior. And we know that with kids who have ASD, autism spectrum disorder, once something becomes ingrained in their routine, it becomes a little bit difficult for them to separate from that routine. So going back to the scenario, so the scenario is you hear about a student who overdosed in the community. So the response, someone said that their truth is whatever the FCPS message says, only starting point I have. Okay. Choices that we make can affect many others. Ooh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, right? Because again, we're highlighting that we are part of a community. And sometimes the choices, not sometimes, every single choice, honestly, that we make has a ripple effect. And sometimes that ripple effect is grand and larger than others. I'm reading another response. What might have gone through the student's mind? Okay, so this is the conversation that you're having. Oh, so you're having your child put themselves in that student's position. So what might have gone through the student's mind? What do you think happened? Remember, you are not alone. Very good. And I'm here. We're here for you. If you have questions or if you want to talk anything, I will ask how they are feeling about the situation. Very good. Maybe even finding out if they knew or heard any rumors about it. Gauge how much they know about the situation and provide a safe space to discuss. Let's talk about the student who overdosed. How do you feel about what happened? Then I share my feelings and thoughts about it and reinforce open communication and talk about pressures for their age group. No one say anything about Narcan. Right? So this is also an opportunity for you to talk about Narcan and or decide that if you and decide if you want your child to carry Narcan on them. So if your family allows your child to spend the night at someone's house, go to a party, leave the house in general, you as a family might decide that you want your child to carry Narcan so that they can help in one of these overdose scenarios. So this is a video from our FCPS campaign called Unskippable. And it's highlighting that you need to be mindful of your tone when you talk to your child. So you don't want to point your finger and say, you need to do this, etc. But you want to come in again with that soft
And
startup. Otherwise, your child is going to want to skip right over whatever you say. So now we have some time for any questions that might be lingering or any questions that I didn't answer. And then I have some resources for you. I'll just go ahead and share them on the screen. Some summer activities because we talked about that routine being important for your child. And you all will receive links for the resources as well. And since this webinar is recorded, it will be on the Family Resource Center YouTube page as well. So you'll be able to access all this information later. And if you have any questions, you could come off of mute or put them in the chat. All right. So one of the questions was, you mentioned a teen giving another teen Narcan. Are there side effects or dangers of a minor giving a medication to another minor? Okay. So Narcan is an opioid reversal medication drug. It's sold over the counter because it can be used with anyone, no matter how big or how small. The dosage doesn't matter for the person, meaning if a baby accidentally ingests an opioid, you are going to give that baby the same full spray of Narcan that you would a fully grown 300-pound adult. Um, However, if depending on how much of the opioid is in that person's system, then you might need to administer more Narcan. So sometimes people need more doses of Narcan because one spray is a single dose, because they have either a stronger opioid in their system or they have consumed a lot of opioids. But there's no inherent dangers, if you will, of a minor administering Narcan to another minor. I guess the only danger is the emotional side effects of witnessing someone overdose. Let me know if that fully answered your question. And FCPS students are allowed to carry Narcan at school. We have Narcan in all of our FCPS buildings. If your child is interested in carrying Narcan in school, they have to complete a Narcan training and show that certificate to the principal and the substance abuse prevention specialist in that school building. And then the parent has to sign a permission form, and then the student can carry Narcan. So they have to complete the training, have their certificate, parent has to sign the permission form, then the student can carry Narcan at school.
We have a question in the Q&A that says what are the signs that a teenager shows when he or she may be using restricted substances in school?
I don't, when you say restricted substances, I'm going to assume that you just mean any type of drug. So the signs that a student might be using substances in general looks like any and everything. And I hate to say that because it's such a general answer, but anything that is way outside of your child's normal behavior is a sign that they might be using a substance. However, you have to keep in mind that because young people are emotionally labile and it's a bit difficult for them to manage their emotions, sometimes they're moody simply because they're teenagers with imbalanced hormones. So just because they're moody or just because they have flu-like symptoms doesn't mean that they're using drugs. And I say flu-like symptoms because an opioid withdrawal feels like the flu times 10. But you might want to look at a completely new friend group. Maybe their friends, maybe that they grew up with, have begun to reject them, usually because that child is using a substance that their friends don't agree with. Their grades are dropping. They're no longer engaging in the activities that they used to enjoy, skipping school, showing up late, skipping class. Any other questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I want to circle back on the autistic kid with ADHD. I'm just like seeking more advice. He's like 60% gen ed, 40% enhanced autism class for now. He's still like on third grade. Um, but I'm like really wondering when he's gonna enter middle school, how he's gonna behave because he's like copying obsessive behavior. Like he has like an obsessive copying behavior, only targeting the odd behaviors, and especially the autistic and whatever it's like odd on the gen ed class. So, and that obsessive, behavior is like really concerning because we've been tackling that with ABA, and it seems that he's like so attached to it till now. um, what do you suggest, like when he's like starting middle school, it's gonna be bigger class and probably mingled with more kids, and he's gonna be probably be targeted by those kids, let's say bullying and all that stuff. How I can prepare him for that transition?
Do you think that you would be able to have conversations with him?
He is language he has like language impairment, so he's like speech delayed, but you know, my problem with him is like he can't like say what happened. So past tenses is like still an issue. If you ask him to what happened at school, he's like he just like goes with, oh, it was good. That's it. I mean, you're not getting any back and forth conversation with him. It's only like short answers to like questions, and that would be it for him. So you don't know what happened, and it's like the school is probably telling me any incident that happened, and for him, it's like everything is good, even though he might probably spend a hard day at school.
Yeah, I wish I could help more, but ASD is not my specialty area. I did do a webinar a while back with the special education PTA, and from what I recall, there was some information in there that I did include about autism, but it's not coming to the front of my brain. But if you send me an email, I will, dang, was that recorded? I think it was recorded. I'll send you the video link and or information that could help you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'll put my email in the chat now.
Okay.
All right. I don't see any more questions in the chat.
We do not have any more in the Q&A as well.
Great. Oh, something that I failed to mention, I was just scrolling up in the chat. When talking about any side effects or dangers of Narcan, when Narcan is given, there are no side effects or harm that happens if there are no opioids in the body. Meaning, if you think, or if you're, when Narcan is administered, it's administered because the person giving the Narcan thinks that someone has overdosed. If that person, let's say, was not on any opioids or they did not actually overdose, maybe they fainted, maybe it was a seizure, whatever, but Narcan was administered, there is no harm that happens, no side effects. But when Narcan is administered to someone who did indeed overdose from an opioid, the side effects is that the Narcan will send them into an acute withdrawal. So that means that that person is now going to start experiencing some of the side effects of withdrawal that happens when the opioid has been removed from the brain site. Okay, so those are the only side effects. I needed to mention that. Okay. Thank you all.